The engagement dinner was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of Zanil's life. The venue looked beautiful, soft lights glowing around the room, flowers perfectly arranged, and a long table filled with family and close friends. Everyone was dressed nicely, laughing, taking pictures, and celebrating her and Kofi. Zanil sat there with a gentle smile, her heart full, thinking maybe, just maybe, things were finally getting better. Kofi held her hand under the table, giving it a soft squeeze. "You okay?" he whispered. She nodded, smiling. "Yeah, I'm happy." Then her father stood up. First it felt normal. Of course he would give a speech. The room slowly quieted down, glasses paused mid-air, all eyes turning toward him. Zanil looked up at him, hoping, just this once, he would say something kind. He cleared his throat and smiled. "We're all gathered here today," he began, "to celebrate something unexpected." Few people chuckled politely. Then he said it. Despite her many failures, she finally found someone willing to stay. The words hit like a slap. The room went silent, not the warm, emotional silence, but the heavy, uncomfortable kind. Few people shifted in their seats. Someone awkwardly laughed, then quickly stopped. Zanil's smile froze on her face. Her chest tightened, but she didn't move. Her mother leaned in, adding softly but loud enough for others to hear, "Well, at least everything worked out in the end." Zanil felt her throat burn. Her eyes stung, but she refused to let the tears fall. She just sat there, still smiling, pretending she wasn't breaking inside. Kofi's hand tightened around hers. But in that moment Zanil realized, this wasn't celebration. It was humiliation, dressed as love. Zanil had always wanted to become a doctor. It wasn't just a random dream, it was something she carried in her heart for years. As a child, she would wrap a scarf around her shoulders like a lab coat and pretend to take care of people. In school, she worked harder than anyone else, staying up late, reading extra books, pushing herself even when it felt too much. Every time she got tired, she reminded herself, "One day I'll make it." Her parents knew about her dream. In fact, they used to support it. At least that's what she believed. Her father would say, "Don't worry about money. Your education is covered." Her mother would smile and add, "Just focus on your grades. We've already secured your med school fund." Those words meant everything to her. So Zanil gave it her all. She said no to distractions, no to fun, no to anything that could risk her future. And when the day finally came, the day she received her acceptance letter, she cried. Not from sadness but from pure joy. She ran to her parents, holding the letter with shaking hands. "I got in," she said, her voice breaking with happiness. For a moment they smiled, but something felt off. A few days later, when she started asking about tuition and payments, the energy in the house changed. Her father avoided her questions. Her mother became quiet. And then one evening they called her into the living room. Her heart was racing, but she still believed everything would be fine. Her father didn't even look at her properly when he said it. "There's no money left." Zanil blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Her mother sighed, like this was somehow an inconvenience for them. "The fund is gone." The words didn't make sense. They felt unreal. "But you said it was secure," Zanil whispered. Her father shrugged slightly. "Things happen. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No regret." Zanil felt like the ground disappeared beneath her. Everything she had worked for, every late night, every sacrifice, it all crashed in a single moment. Her dream didn't slowly fade away. It was taken from her without warning. She stood there, trying to understand, trying to hold herself together, but inside, something broke. Because it wasn't just about money, it was about trust. And in that moment, Zanil realized, the future she had been promised was never really hers. After that day, everything changed for Zanil. She couldn't go to medical school. There was no backup plan, no savings, no support. Just silence from the same people who once promised her the world. For a while, she didn't even know what to do. It felt like her life had suddenly stopped while everyone else kept moving forward. But bills didn't stop. Life didn't stop. So she forced herself to move. Zanil started taking any job she could find. In the mornings, she worked at a small cafe, standing for hours with tired feet, forcing a smile for customers who didn't know her story. In the afternoons, she picked up shifts at a retail store, folding clothes, dealing with rude people, pretending everything was fine. Some nights, she cleaned offices, empty buildings where the silence felt louder than her thoughts. She was always exhausted. There were days she barely slept, days she skipped meals just to save a little money, days her body felt so heavy, she didn't know how she was still standing. And yet, she kept going. But the hardest part wasn't the work. It was going home. Her parents would sit there, watching her like they were disappointed, like she had failed them. "You're always tired," her mother would say. "What exactly are you doing with your life?" Her father would shake his head. "Other people your age are moving forward. You're just stuck." Zanil would stand there, still in her work clothes, hands tired, heart heavier than anything, and just listen. Lazy. That's what they called her. Directionless. As if she wasn't working 3 jobs just to survive. As if she chose this life. Some nights, she would lock herself in her room, sit on the floor, and cry quietly so no one could hear. Not loud cries. Just silent tears that didn't seem to stop. She would stare at her old books, her notes, the life she once planned, and wonder how everything slipped away so easily. She started doubting herself. Maybe they were right. Maybe she wasn't enough. But deep down, under all the pain and exhaustion, there was still a small voice inside her, reminding her of who she used to be. The girl who had a dream. The girl who worked hard. The girl who didn't give up. Even if the whole world, including her own family, chose to ignore her struggle, she was still fighting it every single day. From the outside, Zanil's family looked perfect. Her parents knew exactly how to present themselves. At family gatherings, weddings, and community events, they smiled proudly, dressed well, and spoke with confidence. Her father would laugh loudly, shaking hands, telling people, "We've always done everything for our children." Her mother would nod, adding, "We made sure she had the best opportunities." And people believed them. They always did. Whenever someone asked about Zanil, her parents would speak like they had sacrificed everything for her. "She had every chance," her mother would say with a soft sigh, as if she was the one who had been disappointed. "We supported her as much as we could." No one ever questioned it. No one knew the truth. No one knew that the support they talked about had disappeared when she needed it the most. No one knew about the missing money, the broken promises, or the nights Zanil cried herself to sleep after working non-stop. To everyone else, Zanil looked like the problem. At events, people would smile at her politely, but there was always something behind their eyes. Judgment. Quiet whispers would follow her. She had such good parents. I don't know what went wrong with her. She just didn't use her chances. Zanil would hear those words and force a small smile, pretending they didn't hurt. She would stand there, dressed simply, feeling completely out of place while her parents shined in the spotlight they had created. Sometimes, her mother would even correct her in front of others. "Stand properly," she'd whisper. "At least try to look like you have direction." Zanil would nod, staying quiet. Always quiet, 'cause what could she say? If she spoke the truth, it would sound like excuses. If she defended herself, it would look like disrespect. And deep down, she knew no one was really ready to hear her side anyway. So she carried it alone. Every smile she gave in public felt heavy. Every conversation felt like a performance. She learned how to hide her pain so well that people started believing it didn't exist. But it did. Behind closed doors, away from the perfect image her parents protected so carefully, Zanil was still struggling, still hurting, still trying to rebuild a life that had been quietly taken from her. And the hardest part, watching the world praise the very people who broke her, while she stood there in silence, everything as if none of it ever happened. Even after everything, one question never left Zanil's mind. Where did the money go? At first she tried to ignore it. She told herself it didn't matter anymore. What was done, but the thought kept coming back again and again, especially on the nights when she was too tired to sleep. Didn't make sense. That fund wasn't small. It was years of savings, something her parents had talked about with so much confidence. "It's secure," they had said. "You don't need to worry." So how does something like that just disappear? Whenever she tried to ask, The answers were always vague. Things happened. We had to make decisions. It's in the past now. Those words only made it worse. Because they weren't answers. They were excuses. Zanil started noticing small things she hadn't paid attention to before. New furniture in the house. Expensive dinners. Her father talking about investments. Her mother casually mentioning trips and shopping like money was never a problem. Didn't add up. And the more she thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. It wasn't just confusion anymore. It was suspicion. One evening after a long shift, she met her friend Aisha. They sat in a quiet corner of a small cafe, the kind of place where no one really pays attention to you. Zanil looked exhausted, stirring her drink without even taking a sip. Aisha watched her carefully. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" Zanil didn't even try to deny it. "It just doesn't make sense," she said softly. "They won't tell me anything. It's like they expect me to just accept it and move on." Aisha leaned forward. "Because they think you won't question them." Zanil looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Aisha said, her voice calm but firm, "you've always trusted them. You never pushed back. But this is your future we're talking about." Zanil stayed quiet, her heart starting to beat a little faster. What if the money didn't just disappear? Aisha continued. What if there's more to the story, and they just don't want you to know? Those words stayed with her. For the first time, Zanil allowed herself to think something she had been avoiding all along. What if this wasn't an accident? What if it was a choice? That night, lying in her bed, staring at the ceiling, she made a quiet decision. She was done accepting half answers. Done staying confused. If no one was going to tell her the truth, then she would find it herself. Didn't happen all at once. Zanil didn't suddenly find the truth in one moment. It started small, with questions, with doubt, with that uneasy feeling that refused to go away. She began paying attention, listening more, watching carefully. Then one day, when her parents were out, she did something she had never done before. She looked. Her hands were shaking as she went through old files, drawers, and folders. At first, it felt wrong, like she was crossing a line. But then a voice inside her whispered, "They already crossed it first." That gave her the courage to keep going. Most of what she found was normal: bills, receipts, random documents. Nothing that explained anything. For a moment she almost gave up. Then she saw it. A folder, slightly hidden under a stack of papers. Her name was on it. Her heart started pounding as she opened it. Inside were bank documents, statements, transaction records, things she had never been allowed to see before. She sat down slowly, her eyes scanning the pages. At first, it didn't fully register. Then it did. Withdrawal after withdrawal. Large amounts. Dates that matched the time right before her admission. Her breath caught in her throat. She kept reading, her hands trembling more with every page. And then she saw the total. $127,000. Not lost. Not stolen. Withdrawn. By her parents. Zanil froze. Her mind tried to make sense of it, to find another explanation, but the truth was right there in front of her. Clear. Cold. Impossible to ignore. She flipped through more pages, hoping, needing, to find something that would prove this was all a misunderstanding. But instead she found more. Payments for luxury items. Expensive purchases. Transfers into investment accounts. Things that had nothing to do with emergencies. Nothing to do with survival. Everything to do with choice. Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't fall right away. She just sat there, staring at the papers, feeling something inside her slowly break apart. All this time they knew. They didn't lose the money. They used it. While she was struggling. While she was working herself to exhaustion. While she was blaming herself for not having a future. They had already decided to take it from her. Her chest tightened, and this time she couldn't hold it in. Tears came. Not just tears of sadness, but of betrayal, of anger, of a pain so deep it felt heavy in her bones. Because it wasn't just money. It was her dream. Her years of hard work, her trust. And now, sitting there with the truth in her hands, Zanil finally understood something that changed everything. They didn't just fail her. They chose themselves over her, and expected her to live with it. After the speech, the night never really recovered. People tried to go back to normal. Soft music started again, waiters continued serving food, but the energy in the room had changed, felt heavy, uncomfortable, like everyone had just witnessed something they weren't supposed to see. Whispers started. Zanil could hear them even when she tried not to. Did he really say that? That was harsh. I thought her family was so supportive. Every word felt like a quiet echo of humiliation. She kept her posture straight, her smile still in place, but inside, everything was shaking. Her chest felt tight, her thoughts loud and messy. That one sentence from her father kept repeating in her mind, over and over again. Despite her failures. It wasn't new. She had heard things like that her whole life. But tonight was different. Tonight it wasn't private. Tonight it was in front of everyone. Kofi leaned closer to her, his voice low but serious. Zanil, what was that about? She didn't answer immediately. For a second, she just stared at the table, her fingers lightly gripping the edge. I don't know, she said softly, but even she knew that wasn't the truth. Kofi looked at her confused. That didn't sound like a joke. It wasn't, she replied quietly. There was a pause between them, not an awkward one, but a heavy one, the kind that carries too many unspoken things. Across the room, her parents were still smiling, still talking to guests like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just broken her in front of everyone. Zanil looked at them, and something inside her shifted. For years she had stayed quiet. She had taken the blame, carried the shame, protected their image even when it cost her everything. She told herself it was easier that way. But standing there now, hearing the whispers, feeling the weight of everyone's judgment, she realized something. Silence wasn't protecting her. It was protecting them. Kofi gently touched her hand again. Talk to me, he said. Please. Zanil took a slow breath. Her heart was still racing, her emotions still all over the place. But beneath all of that, something new was rising. Not fear. Not sadness. Something stronger. She looked at him, her eyes no longer avoiding the truth. I will, she said quietly. But not here. Because for the first time in a long time, Zanil wasn't planning to stay silent anymore. That same night, after most of the guests had left and the house finally went quiet, Zanil didn't go to her room. She waited. Her parents were still in the living room, talking casually like nothing had happened, like the dinner had gone perfectly. That calmness. It made something inside her burn even more. She walked in slowly. We need to talk. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm enough to make both of them look at her. There was something different in her tone, something they weren't used to. Her father frowned slightly. Not tonight, Zanil. We're tired. No, she said, shaking her head. Tonight. The room went still. For a moment no one moved. Then her father sighed, clearly annoyed. Fine. What is it now? Zanil didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she quietly took out her phone, and then a folder she had been holding. I found the records, she said. Her mother's expression changed instantly. Just for a second, but Zanil saw it. What records? Her father asked, his voice sharper now. Zanil stepped forward and placed the papers on the table between them. The bank statements. The withdrawals. $127,000. Silence. Her father barely glanced at the papers before shaking his head. I don't know what you think you saw, but you're misunderstanding it. I'm not, Zanil replied, her voice steady. The dates match. The amounts match. It's all there. Her father's jaw tightened. You had no right to go through our things. That was his response. Not denial of the truth, just anger that she found it. Zanil felt something twist inside her, but she didn't step back. You told me there was no money left, she said. You made me believe it was gone. It was gone, he snapped. We used it. There it was. The truth finally said out loud. The room fell quiet again, but this silence felt different, heavier, final. Zanil slowly turned to her mother, her eyes searching for something, anything that felt like regret. But her mother just crossed her arms and said almost coldly, We did what was necessary. Zanil blinked. Necessary. We had responsibilities, her mother continued. Things you wouldn't understand. Investments. Expenses. We couldn't just leave money sitting there. That money was for my education, Zanil said, her voice starting to shake now. For my future. And life changed, her mother replied. You have to accept that. That was the moment something inside Zanil finally broke. All the pain she had been holding in, all the confusion, all the silent suffering, it didn't feel quiet anymore. Turned into something sharp, something heavy. Anger. Not loud, not wild, but deep and controlled. You didn't just spend money, she said, her voice low but strong. You took my chance. Neither of them answered. Because this time, there was nothing left to deny. Kofi found out the truth sooner than Zanil expected. He had been waiting for her outside, worried after the tension at dinner. When she finally stepped out of the house, her eyes were red but her face was calm in a way he had never seen before. Zanil, what happened? He asked gently. For a moment she just looked at him. Then, without saying anything, she handed him the folder. Read it. Kofi took it, confused at first. But as his eyes moved across the pages, his expression slowly changed. Confusion turned into shock, then disbelief, then something heavier. He looked up at her. This is real. Zanil nodded quietly. Every word. There was a long silence. Kofi closed the folder slowly, taking a deep breath like he was trying to process everything at once. So all this time they knew, he asked. Yes, she said. Her voice didn't shake this time. They knew. For a second Kofi just stood there. Then he shook his head, almost in disbelief. And they still stood there tonight. And said that about you? Zanil didn't answer. She didn't need to. Kofi's grip on the folder tightened slightly. That's not right, he said firmly. That's not just unfair, that's wrong. Then he stepped closer to her. You didn't fail, Zanil, he said, looking straight into her eyes. They failed you. Those words hit differently. Not like the whispers. Not like the judgment. For the first time in a long time, someone was saying the truth out loud. Inside the house, her parents were still talking, still acting like everything was under control. But something had already shifted. They just didn't realize it yet. Because now, the truth wasn't hidden anymore. Kofi knew. And he wasn't someone they could silence or manipulate. The next time they stepped into the room, the energy felt completely different. Zanil wasn't standing behind them anymore. She wasn't quiet, wasn't unsure. And Kofi stood beside her. Not as a guest, not as an outsider, but as someone who saw everything clearly. Her father tried to speak, to take control of the conversation again, but the confidence in his voice wasn't the same. Her mother's calm expression started to crack, because for the first time, their version of the story wasn't the only one in the room. The control they had held for years was slipping, and they could feel it. Zanil didn't need to argue anymore. She didn't need to explain herself. The truth was already doing that for her. The next morning felt different. There was no shouting, no chaos, just a quiet tension in the house. Zanil stood in the living room, calm, composed, like she had already made her decision. Her parents sat across from her, waiting, but for the first time they didn't look in control. Zanil looked at them, not with anger this time, but with clarity. You didn't just take money, she said slowly. You took my future. Neither of them responded. Her mother opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Her father looked away. Zanil nodded slightly, like she had expected that. I'm not going to expose you, she continued. I'm not going to stand in front of people and tell them what you did. For a second, relief flashed across their faces. But then she added quietly, not because you don't deserve it, but because I deserve peace. That hit harder than anything else. I'm done, she said. I'm done explaining myself. I'm done carrying something that was never mine. And just like that she let them go. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with distance. Real distance. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, Zanil started building her life on her own terms. It wasn't easy. She still worked hard, still struggled some days. But now, every step she took felt like it belonged to her. She applied again, this time to a medical training program. It wasn't the path she had planned before. It was slower, harder, but it was hers. And she didn't give up. One morning, she stood outside the training center, holding her acceptance letter in her hands. The building wasn't grand, not like the dream she once had, but to her it meant everything. Fresh start. Second chance. Kofi stood beside her, smiling softly. "You ready?" he asked. The next morning felt different. There was no shouting, no chaos, just a quiet tension in the house. Zanil stood in the living room, calm, composed, like she had already made her decision. Her parents sat across from her, waiting, but for the first time they didn't look in control. Zanil looked at them, not with anger this time, but with clarity. "You didn't just take money," she said slowly. "You took my future." Neither of them responded. Her mother opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Her father looked away. Zanil nodded slightly, like she had expected that. "I'm not going to expose you," she continued. "I'm not going to stand in front of people and tell them what you did." For a second, relief flashed across their faces. But then she added quietly, "Not because you don't deserve it, but because I deserve peace." That hit harder than anything else. "I'm done," she said. "I'm done explaining myself. I'm done carrying something that was never mine." And just like that, she let them go. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with distance. Real distance. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, Zanil started building her life on her own terms. It wasn't easy. She still worked hard, still struggled some days. But now, every step she took felt like it belonged to her. She applied again, this time to a medical training program. It wasn't the path she had planned before. It was slower, harder, but it was hers. And she didn't give up. One morning, she stood outside the training center, holding her acceptance letter in her hands. The building wasn't grand, not like the dream she once had, but to her it meant everything. Fresh start. Second chance. Kofi stood beside her, smiling softly. "You ready?" he asked. Zanil looked at the building, then down at the letter, and then back up again. There was a quiet strength in her eyes now. "Yeah," she said. This time her smile was real, because she finally understood something they never did. They called me a failure, because they knew the truth would make them one.